Topic this week is fluency. We're going to start with our story of the week, and this week's story is called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming. I want you to listen to the story and brainstorm how to use it across the curriculum in possibly a vegetable theme or a spring theme or a bunny theme. Then check your answers on the next slide and drop your sharing in the weekly literature sharing Dropbox. To check your answers, you can try to peek at it here. It's actually pretty big this week, but I have put that in the presentation file folder in D2L for this week if you're keeping track of those. Also, some treats I have for the book this week. I have an an author interview video, which again, it's good to show these to the kiddos so they know that the person that wrote their book is a real person. I also have a link to the author's website and link to book ideas specific to this book. You can try those out. Read our weekly message, and I just wanted to highlight that the journal this week is Explain the Significance of Developing Fluency in Young Readers and How Can You Help Learners Achieve This Goal. So it's two parts. Why is fluency important? And second of all, how do you as the teacher help them become fluent readers? Make sure when you answer this journal that you are answering those two questions specifically with information from either your textbook or from our presentation. Also, we have a warm-up activity. You'll click here, and that will take you actually to the next slide. And we're going to start with thinking about our own fluency. What's something you're fluent at doing? I want you to think about it, and then click here to post to our Padlet board. Our first topic this week is defining fluency, and I want to see what you know, what your prior knowledge is. Again, this is that before reading, and I want you to watch the video of this, a bunch of young readers, and think about what is fluency, use what you know and what the video shows you to define it. Don't peek by looking ahead. Think about it in your own words. How would you define fluency? And then click here to take us to a Padlet board, and I'd like to see what your definition of fluency is. Then I define it for you, and I share with you a brainstorm that I do with young children. Now this one was found online, but we used to make a Venn diagram in our classrooms of fluent reading. Fluency has three components: automaticity, accuracy, and prosody. And I'm going to break each one down. Click on the podcast, the Listen and Learn video, to have automaticity explained to you, and also watch the video of automaticity practice in a classroom. Next, we'll learn about the component accuracy. Again, click on the podcast to hear all about what accuracy means. Then we talk about how do we get students to be accurate readers, and this podcast will share that with you. The third component of fluency is prosody, and prosody is explained to you in the podcast at the bottom. And then the next slide shares how do we practice prosody with boys and girls. It's really developed two different ways, and so this podcast will share that with you. And then I want you to watch this video. This teacher is phenomenal. She has a poetry club in her classroom, and they work through the week, and then they showcase their poems on Friday, and then they switch it up again the next week. It's great to see prosody practice in action, and just watching her is phenomenal. So we move from the definition of fluency into what is teaching, or what does it take to be a teacher of fluency. And we'll start with our timeline. I have a podcast that will explain it to you, but it's important to know what's developmentally appropriate when you are working with your learners to develop these skills. The teacher's role in fluency instruction is to instruct, to facilitate, and to assess. Instruction is important because teachers must model and explicitly teach. Click on the podcast to have this explained to you, what this means in the classroom. These are some visual resources you may use in your classroom. Click on the podcast to hear an explanation of how you would use these in your classroom. Teachers not only instruct, they facilitate, and this is where you are the guide. And I have some tips for being a guide to help students become fluent. Click on the podcast. It's in the top right corner this time. Check that out. And then we move on to the kind of text we use with readers called a predictable text. Listen to the podcast in the top left corner, read the information on the slide, and when you're ready, watch this short video of a book that is considered a predictable text. When you're finished with the book, click here and share on our Padlet board why this book might help a student be successful in reading fluently, and really specifically think about how the success is for their fluency, not for any other part of reading. This is going to be a slide that you're going to take some time on. I'd like you to listen to the podcast, and it's really an explanation of the directions for this activity. This is the recording sheet for this activity. Again, you never have to print my recording sheets out, but if you want it, it is on D2L in the presentation file folder. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on each of these, and the podcast will explain to you how you can use the recording sheet and the activities. So I won't go any further. Then we have another try it out, and we're going to see all those activities that you just learned about on the previous slide and took notes on. You're going to see if you can identify them in an Educated video. So click here and that will take you to the video. And then you can jot your answers down on a piece of scrap paper. There are some fluency activities we definitely want to avoid in the classroom. They're just bad practices. Click on the podcast to listen more. And then I want you to do this instead. If you click on that, it will take you to a link online. It's a short article, and it has great activities that you can do for fluency practice. Then click here to take you to a Padlet board to share a good activity for fluency. And make sure you read people's postings there, because that's how we build our just bag of ideas that we can use. Also, to build ideas, I want you to browse the internet, and I have two places you can go. On the left, we have a Pinterest link to my fluency board, and I would like you to check that out. Then I'd like you to click on the article in the computer and browse through those resources. When you found something you're really interested in sharing, click here, go to the Padlet board, and share another good quality fluency activity. Also, anything you find you might want to start pinning, remember you need 10 pins this week. This is one of my favorite fluency activities. Watch the video of it in action. So now we have identified fluency, we have talked about how to instruct fluency. Now we need to learn how to assess fluency, because this assessment will drive our instruction and it'll tell you what your students need help in. So the first area of assessment is in phrasing. And there's a podcast to explain it to you. All of the rubrics that are here can be found in the presentation file folder of D2L, and you can have your own free copy. Next thing we assess is expression. Again, you can grab that rubric on D2L, and there's a podcast that explains how to use it. And then we have assessing pace. And this is a video of an assessment being done on a student called a timed reading. They're very important when we want to determine words per minute. So listen to the podcast for that explanation and watch the short video. Students need to also become self-assessors of their fluency and all of their reading skills. We need to have students assess themselves in their phrasing, their expression, their pace, and their accuracy. Watch the video of students in a reading center assessing their own fluency. These are some rubrics that students can use for self-assessment, and you can click on each one to have a full-size rubric and pin these if you like them. Also, the podcast will explain how you use those in your classroom. Family involvement is also important. We want to get those students reading and practicing their fluency skills at home. So I have 2 fluency graphs, and each one of them is linked that you can grab them if you'd like them. The directions are here, but it's easiest if you listen to the podcast for the explanation. It's a little tricky to understand. This is something that I did in my classroom, though. Last, we're going to assess your fluency, and WCPM is your words correct per minute. So to do this, you're going to, when you're ready, start this timer. And then you're going to read this passage. You have to read it out loud because fluency is about reading out loud. Then when the timer ends, look to the right and you will find your words per minute. If you finish the passage, go back to the top and keep reading and add your words together. And then I'd like you to post your score in the Dropbox. You can attach it to anything else you're dropping for the week, just so you understand how that's working. Again, this passage is from a 5th grade reading level, so you should do very well on it. Now, we're going to kind of circle back. I want you to, if you need help on Padlet for editing, watch this video. If you know how to edit a Padlet board, you don't need to. But what I want you to do is go back to that first slide where you define fluency. I think it was slide number 7. And I want you to visit the Padlet board, which it'll take you also right here. You don't really have to go back to slide 7. But in slide 7, I ask you to put a definition of fluency in your own words. Now, I want you to make it better. I want you to go back to that first definition and add a new definition. Do not erase your first definition. Write a second definition underneath. Okay, and this kind of is going to show your growth in the area, hopefully. Last slide. Remember, this is your go-to slide when you want to know what's going on for the week. Our weekly assignments are your journal entry. Explain the significance of developing fluency in young readers and how can you help them achieve this goal. So what is it? Why is it important? And then how do you as the teacher help them become fluent readers? Please answer both parts with details. Next, you had a lot of Padlet boards this week. I know, probably annoyed with me, but there's 5 Padlet boards. I've listed the slides, and they're my way of knowing you're interacting with the text. So it's asking you to learn the material and connect at a higher level. So it's important for me to see your interaction. Third one is your participation Dropbox on D2L. There's 3 things to drop. One are your notes from slide 23 where you had to look up the fluency activities. Next, we have our try it out answers for the EduCanon on slide 24, and then your words correct per minute when you did your 1-minute timed assessment at slide 36. Our weekly literature sharing, Muncha Muncha Muncha, should go in the weekly literature sharing Dropbox. And over the course of the semester, you'll need to be selecting 10 pins for fluency. If you get a chance, again, skim chapter 3 for next week. Just real brief, look at some headlines so you know what we're talking about. And then you should be working on 2 projects. Your lesson plan number 2, which is vocabulary or comprehension, is due on February 21st. And the children's book list and curriculum alignment project are due on the 28th. And those have been ongoing. So I just wanted to remind you to make sure you're getting them finished. And that's it for the week. Enjoy fluency.